Hello and welcome to the Unnamed Automotive Podcast. My name is Sammy Hajjasad, and with me, as always, is my good friend and fellow automotive journalist, Benjamin Hunting. Say hi to the people, Ben.
Sometimes I'm so caught off guard by how you instantly switch into this suave, sophisticated broadcast voice. It's like bringing me back to my childhood listening to CBC broadcasters who have been trained on decades of elocution and proper pronunciation. It's really impressive, and it just sweeps me away in this like warm, buttery bassundo. Basso profundo.
Do you think I have what it takes to be on CBC?
I think so.
I'm going to pitch them. They just opened a whole Hamilton chapter. I'm going to, maybe I should pitch them.
Why not? I mean, leave me behind in the dust. That's what you've been wanting to do since day one.
Yeah, clearly.
Get rid of that baggage.
That is the voice and opinion of my friend and fellow automotive journalist, Benjamin Hunting. You can find his work all over the internet. Ben, hit them up with some plugs.
Sure, you can find my work at Haggerty, at Motor Trend, and at driving.ca, and also autotrader.ca. Let's put that in there.
Yeah, put that in there, because then I'll get to say it again. Autotrader.ca, driving.ca, that's where you can find my work. Ben, we've got a really cool car to talk about this week, but before we do, is there anything you want to talk about? Like anything you want to say?
Oh, you've really caught me off guard.
Nailed it. I wanted to scare you.
Just wanted to get me on the wrong footing to start the podcast.
Well, what is it that you think is so for the listeners that don't know this, me and Ben have a long preamble before we do any recording of any kind. We get into the mood. We talk about what's going on.
Literally over an hour this time.
Yeah, it was a really long time this time. And then you say I get into like podcast voice.
Yeah, it's like a total swap. It's like you have your normal voice, and then it's like, hello. It's like, you ever listen? You are listening to The Quiet Storm, WEXP 99.5 FM all night long. Last on the dial, but first in your hearts. It's like that's.
So it sounds like you've got one of those too.
No, except I don't use it.
Why not?
You have weaponized it and use it as an effective tool for podcasting. I only bring it out as a joke from time to time because I'm afraid of its power.
I'm not afraid of my power. If I have any power, I should be using it in any way or form.
That's a very modern opinion. All right.
Like the power to get this podcast off the ground and start talking about the car that you've been driving, which from what I understand, and I have it written down here, is a sport sedan.
So you might think it's a sports sedan.
It says sports sedan on the paper that you mailed to me in preparation for today's episode.
With all those Polaroids I took of you going in and out of your garage that you could puzzle over.
Sports sedan.
Why didn't he just knock on the door? It's certainly advertised as a sports sedan, and once upon a time it was a sports sedan, but then a weird thing happened, and that weird thing is Lexus kind of lost interest in building sports sedans. And they ended up producing something that's neither a sports sedan nor anything else, really. It's like a mishmash vehicle that was only available for like 2 years. Mm-hmm. In fact, the vehicle I drove is a 2025 model year, which is odd because it's... Sammy, take a look at the calendar. Can you tell me what year it is?
I don't see anything wrong with that. I'm looking at the calendar. It says 20, and then there are two more numbers after that, 20. Yeah. Which seems like we're on to 26. I see.
Yeah, and it's
that is how I read the calendar. Most people don't know this, but I really analyze each.
Really struggle with it. Not only is it 2026, but it's been 2026 for a while, and yet I was given the Lexus IS 500 to drive, even though it hasn't been in production now for at least 5-6 months. This is a low production vehicle. The model I had a placard on the console that said Ultimate Edition 009 of 500. So between Canada and the US, I think they made 500, and I think Canada got 140 of them. I'm not exactly sure.
And you went and you ruined one of them?
I didn't ruin it because I barely drove it. Do you know why I barely drove it?
Yeah, I know why.
Yeah.
Because you wanted to keep the resale value really high for the other 100.
I always think about Lexus resale value whenever I'm driving there, and I try to be super respectful of that. Oh, here's what happened.
That's why Lexus resale value is always high, because nobody drives them.
Back in 2009, Lexus came out with a super fantastic engine. They did? Yeah. That is the and I just realized that I made a mistake in this review that I wrote. It's not I had thought this.
What's happening?
I'm correcting myself on the fly. I believe it was 2008, 2009. Lexus came out with a really cool engine that surprised everybody. It was a 5-liter V8 engine. Mm-hmm. They put it at first. It was in the ISF sports sedan. It was an actual sports sedan. It was a car. They took the Lexus IS, the compact entry-level car they had, 4-door. They wanted to go up against, BMW M and Audi RS and AMG and all that stuff, all the alphabet soup of the era.
Yeah.
And they're like, all right, we're going to come up with something called F Sport. And we're just going to call this the F, which is going to be our, capital letter flagship. Yep. And I remember the funny thing about, there's two things I remember about the launch of the ISF. The first is everyone was surprised by the V8, but the second was it had fake exhaust tips.
Yep.
At the back, it had quad exhausts that were like stacked at an angle of each other.
Very cool looking. And then
looked cool, but the actual exhaust was behind that.
Like, and you could
those
see
weren't
it.
tips.
Yeah.
You can see it through those tips. And the funny thing is, like, you don't have to do that, guys. You can just make an actual exhaust that is the actual exhaust, and everyone would have been okay with that. It was kind of like a hat on a hat, and they caught a lot of flack for it. Yeah. But all that to say, right in that period, I believe this engine was around like 430 or 440 horsepower, something like that. It was quick. They put a suspension tune in it that was, at least comparable to an M3 at that time. That was the bogey they were shooting for. And it was the first time Lexus had done that. There had been no real sports sedan from them. I mean, we had the GS with the V8 that I think was as close as anyone had ever gotten from Lexus. Mm-hmm. And also the first generation, this is the second gen IS, just to be clear. The first gen IS had a 1JZ V8 under the hood, V6, sorry.
Not V6,
inline six.
Which is a very popular engine.
Related to the 2JZ that had been in the Supra. And a lot of people would turbo that engine.
They would turbo the heck out of it.
So I remember being in the street racing scene in that time. And someone showed up to a meet and they had a leased IS 300 that they had put a full wide body kit on and a turbo, and it had to go back. Yeah, the lease was up in like 3 months, and they didn't know what they were going to do, like if they were going to buy it out or like, I guess. Imagine the penalty if you return like essentially
an entirely modified car. Yes.
Something that belongs on the cover of like Sport Compact Tuner or something. And you show up at the dealership and you walk around it with the person inspecting it for the lease return and like just have that conversation. Anyway, the ISF was an interesting car, if not a perfect car. It had flaws. It didn't necessarily capture the imagination. They came out with a second gen version. It had a lot more power. The V8 engine that was used in the ISF, it started spreading out through the Lexus lineup. We got it in the RCF, the GSF, and currently the LC500, which is a perfect car.
Can I stop you for a minute?
Yes.
The RCF.
Oof.
Yeah.
Do you really want to go down that path? Because we're going to go down another path pretty soon.
Is it a similar path?
Two paths diverged
is a motor wrapped in a car, right? Like it's a motor that's wrapped in a car that didn't feel like up to it.
What happened with the RC is Lexus had built a convertible version of the IS called the ISC.
And they were like, and it was not a good convertible.
It was not popular, but they decided to spin off a coupe called the RC. And they were like, okay, we're going to make a coupe and we'll make a convertible as well. We'll just put everything under that banner. So when they built the platform for the RC, they took like the middle bit from an ISC, the rear end of like a GS, and the front end of an IS, and they put it all together. And then they said, just joking, we're not going to make a convertible. So you had this platform that was overly strong. Like it didn't need to have the torsional rigidity that it had, because suddenly it had a roof. To give you a comparison, the RCF weighs like 400 pounds more than an ISF, and it has two fewer doors.
It's so heavy. It was a 2-door, and it had the RCF had this sweetheart of an engine. And
it's fantastic. It's a great V8, but also worth pointing out that the regular RC was saddled with the same weight but it
Yeah,
had
and
like
no
a 3.5
engine.
liter V6.
I think a 4-cylinder came to it eventually. I'm not
Probably.
sure.
It was like
that engine. Yeah, sorry.
It just reminded me of like Lexus trying to do a muscle car. Like I can remember being on a racetrack in the RSF and like not having any fun at all.
RCF.
Sorry, RCF. It just did not want to turn and stuff.
Yeah.
Like it wasn't into turning. It was quick in a straight line, I guess, and it made the right sound.
It sounded so good, and it went fast decently, and that was its thing. Then we got a car that didn't need to go fast with that engine. Sounded good, looked good, and felt good. In the LC 500,
which is one of the best looking cars of the last decade, regardless. But
was not overly performance.
Well, it's
oriented.
A grand touring car.
Yeah, and it felt like a grand touring car. The major drawback to the LC 500 is its infotainment system, and that's
But they fixed that. They fixed it in later models.
Mm-hmm.
They got rid of the trackpad. So
and that's it.
All of this to say, this engine is still around, and this
engine is well received.
It's only around now in the LC 500 because, as I mentioned, this IS 500 went off the market last year. But here's where things get super weird and twisted. The IS 500 is not an ISF. What it is it's the IS 350, the last generation IS 350. Mm-hmm. F Sport, which means it has adaptive shocks, but everything is tuned for like the V6. Okay. Mm-hmm. And keep in mind, that's important. We'll get to that later. It has a torsion differential.
Okay.
The only
nice.
other difference between the IS 500 and like a V6 F Sport version of the car is 6-piston Brembo brakes at the front. That's it. Everything else is just bone standard V6 IS. So they take that platform and they drop this a 5-liter V8 in it. Now the engine at this point in time makes 472 horsepower and 395 pound-feet of torque. I think it redlines around 7,000, and it has an 8-speed automatic transmission, not the ZF transmission that everyone's so happy with, just another transmission that also happens to have 8 speeds. Mm-hmm. You can see where things might go wrong here, where you have this fantastic motor and a platform that is not intended to have this motor, but they're married together and they have to make the best of it.
Yeah.
And they don't. They straight up do not. This is one of the most disappointing cars I've driven in a long time. It is one of the few performance cars I've actually had to leave at home because there was snow on the ground. That almost never happens. I actually can't think of the last time this happened. The last time I had problems in the snow with a press car that was a serious problem was when I was living in Montreal. My alley in the back, the snow removal people didn't always come on time. The city abdicated all of its snow removal responsibilities from the alleys in Montreal. So we had to hire private contractors to do it. And sometimes, there's a big snowstorm and you're kind of last on the list. So I had I want to say it was like a 4 Series. And I ended up having to, I get to the corner of my alley where it's like a 90-degree turn to get to the street. And the snow had built up so much, the car high-sided and it got stuck.
Oh, yeah.
And I normally, in old school cars, you can like open the door of the car and rock it back and forth with your body to try and get traction. But this was right around the time that BMW had introduced, if you open the door, it puts itself in park. And you can't have the door open and the transmission in drive because quote unquote people were dying. So remember Anton Yelchin? Yes, no.
Yes. He passed away from the Jeep.
The Jeep that had crushed him when it was in drive. And so that was right around that period. So a lot of automakers put in this safety override. So I actually got stuck there and I had to have someone help me push the car, but I was able to get it out and keep driving. With the IS 500, I'll just detour quickly into my snow problems before I get to the rest of the issues with the car. Mm-hmm. It was on winter tires. It was on Continental winter tires. I had a snowfall of about 2.5 inches. My road out front is gravel and it wasn't plowed. So I'm like, okay, I'm going to go out and have some fun because that's what I usually do when it snows in a car that has performance pretensions, right? I stop at the end of the driveway to make sure no one's coming from either direction. And this is where the problems start. The vehicle doesn't want to move at that point. And literally 2.5 inches of snow is not a lot of snow. I tried disabling the traction control it's almost impossible to know whether it's on or off, because instead of giving you a light on the dash that says, traction control is off, or like, when it lights up to let you know in yellow that it's not on, you get this message on the driver's gauge cluster that says traction control turned off, but the message never goes away. No matter how many times you push the button again. I actually turned the car on and off, opened the door and closed it, and the message still wouldn't go away. So I had no way of knowing whether traction control was on. I tried going up the narrow hill that's near my house, the one that I actually was able to get up in the Nissan Leaf with no problems, in the similar snowstorm. The car barely made it up going sideways. And I mean crawling sideways up this road. So at this point, I decide this isn't worth it. I turn around in a neighbor's driveway. It's completely flat. The car gets stuck in the driveway.
No,
it just keeps going sideways. I eventually was able to rock it out and then limp back home. Really, really surprising. I used to daily drive my CTSV in the winter on Blizzax, and it had 400 horsepower, but it was a manual, and it didn't have like invasive traction control like this.
It had like less invasive traction control.
Yeah, exactly. So that was not impressive. But the fundamental problem with this car is it's an old platform with a really great engine, and it's a total mismatch. In the US, it costs about 60,000. Let me double check. Sorry. No, yeah, 60. Is that right? That can't be right.
What
68,000
in Canada or in the US?
In the US, I guess that is right. So
I've got the price range of it. I got 60,800 for the entry level model.
Yeah, there's three different models.
The top end model is 72. Almost $73,000.
And that would be what I had, because I had the Ultimate in Canada, which has those 19-inch BBS wheels and whatnot. And they only sold 150 of those in the US. Mine wasn't flare yellow. Canada didn't do that. In Canada, the price is $79,000, which is a better deal. But still, once you get to that amount of money, you're up against much better cars.
You're in a world of beautiful cars, wonderful cars, like
more modern cars too.
Is that so? Sorry, keep going. Because I know we're going to get to the reality here. It's not just like a traction control that won't let a V8 get done. It's not just a transmission that's tuned for like...
This car is only good at one thing, and that's going quick in a straight line, and it is decent at that.
And it's only decent at that, yeah.
Everything else about it...
What is that, 0 to 60 again? 4
or something like that? I don't know.
And that's tough, because modern cars, even in this class of like C63s, which I think have like a hybrid powertrain, or M3s, which don't.
But this is not an M3 competitor, right? Like the way this is priced, it's probably like a 340i or something.
M340i?
Yeah.
Those are still wicked. Those are such good
that's
cars.
Still a way better car than this one is, because everything else about this car falls apart as soon as you are not driving in a straight line. The suspension is not fun. It's not in any way engaging. Like even when it's in Sport Plus, there's nothing about the car that makes you want to fling it around. And even if you did, the electronics on the car are constantly way ahead of you, wringing their hands and going, "Oh no, think of the children." Like it's really a car that does not, it's aggressive about you not having a good time. The exhaust sounds great, but the transmission, it's not very well tuned, in the sense that occasionally it's reluctant to shift, especially part throttle shifting. It's not happy with that kind of stuff. It can feel clunky. It has paddle shifters if you want to do that kind of thing, I guess. I never did.
Oh, you didn't use them. Okay.
Well, I tried them, but like there's nothing about it that makes you want to do that. Like you don't get in this car and want to drive. You get in this car and you're like, all right, back to the 470 horsepower salt mines, I guess. Like it's just so weird. Like it's so strange that there's nothing about this car that made me want to engage with it. I mean, it looks okay inside. It's got, mine had red leather. It's got a terrible infotainment system with the little touchpad, but it's a touch screen at least, so you can avoid that if you want to. Okay. But it is dated inside. It's okay. But again, for $80,000 Canadian, it had better be more than okay. The bottom line for me on this car is it feels, and this is, I've seen other people who've driven this car say, oh, what Lexus did was build a classic muscle car. They put a big engine in a small car and they didn't really touch anything else about it. And that's what you get. And it's charming because it feels like an anachronism. It feels like how cars used to feel. No, that's not. If you want to go back to the 60s, where they did take an intermediate sized car and put a big engine in it and then not really do anything about it.
Yeah.
That was a thing that people did 50 years ago. But that's in this case, we have a car that is a quote unquote luxury sports sedan that is supposed to be competitive with other luxury sports sedans, not bog standard intermediate sedans that have a big motor, of which there's nothing else in its class, right? This is perhaps most equivalent to a four-door Mustang, except the Mustang is a much more put together package. Like a V8 Mustang, a GT, is so much more engaging to drive. There's been so much more thought put into the experience. This is really a car that was cobbled together from the parts shelf. They did not put any effort into tuning it into a cohesive whole. And that is a huge, I just don't see why anyone would buy this car.
It sounds
sorry about the rant, but
no, but I'm trying to think. I don't think it sounds like a Mustang at all. I think it sounds a lot like a last gen Charger.
Yeah, you're probably right. That's a much better analogy.
And the Charger is not, unless you got like a Hellcat, is not a $80,000 car.
It would be like a last gen Charger Scat Pack, except the Scat Pack knows what it is.
And the Scat Pack had, yes, okay, yeah.
The Scat Pack is tuned to be a comfortable cruiser, and it pretends you can go on the track, but no one does that. And you can go to a drag strip and have fun with it if you want, but it's soft enough to use every day where you're like, okay, this is comfortable. And it has, I believe it's a ZF transmission, that fantastic 8-speed, which is a real gem of an automatic. And it's large and roomy inside, right? So all of the things that the Lexus is in terms of like dynamics, like not focused, wallowy, too bumpy, just like not going to go around corners in an aggressive way. The Charger does that too, but you expect it because it's a big car,
right?
So it's
like a full size sedan. So
exactly,
the sports sedan is much smaller, and its rear seat is compromised. Its trunk space is obviously compromised. And the luxury element of it.
Speaking of trunk space, you say it's compromised. I can tell you that in the IS 500, it's even more compromised than you might think because they included a full-size spare, but there's no room under the car for it. So it's inside the trunk, and there's a big hump that they cover with like a carpet, like a removable carpet. And when I say big hump, I mean imagine a 19-inch wheel or whatever underneath in your trunk that you have to lift everything over. So yeah, not great.
So but I think the most difficult thing here is the IS. This caught me off guard when I was doing the research on this. IS is in its third generation, and technically this generation is still related to a 2013 model.
Yeah, well, the new IS came out in 26, and there's only one model, the IS 350, so far. And that model is just trickling out now, and that's the fourth generation car. So
there is a fourth generation model.
Yeah, it's out right now.
And that means that this last one has been on the market in its like current like platform and chassis
for like 12 years.
That's a long time.
Again, comparisons to the Dodge Charger ring true.
And that's really long when you compare it to how quickly Mercedes and BMW approach upgrading the 3 Series and C-Class.
I think it's clear that Lexus has seeded the compact sedan segment years ago. I don't think that they took the IS seriously for, 5 years now at least. It had a major refresh, I think, during the pandemic, and that was kind of nice, but it still had that weird trackpad issue. And it's a beautiful car, I think. Exterior design is quite nice. And interior design, if it wasn't for the infotainment system, I actually kind of like. But it's like the car is not competitive overall, right? It was
eventually all these things add up. It's not spacious. The technology isn't quite nearly as intuitive or like.
But even going beyond that, look at the drivetrains. I mean, we're in an era where the M340i has an absurd amount of horsepower. Mm-hmm. The 4-cylinder versions of the BMW are also, pretty quick. We say that for reference, that 6-cylinder makes almost 400 horsepower. Yeah, it makes way more than that.
It feels either it's transmission tuning or
it's
they're
just lying on the spreadsheet.
Yeah, it's much more powerful than it gives it credit than anyone will give it credit for.
And you know what? If Lexus had put in a bit of effort and said we can't build, we're not going to put a twin turbo V6 in the IS 500 in the IS, but here's a V8 version that will get us through until we can do that. and they put more effort into making this an actual planned car instead of just a dump a big motor in the car we already have, then that might have been more compelling, because it is a way for them to stand out. And if you look back on how Mercedes has tackled things, there have been times where Mercedes just dumped a V8 in the C class and was like, here you go. But they didn't just leave it at that. Like, everything else about the car was upgraded as well. The IS 500 falls on its face because it doesn't do the necessary work to take advantage of its fantastic motor.
So in your mind, if they're going to come back with an IS 500 or an ISF, what is required for them to do?
It's not going to happen. I think this engine's dead. I think that the LC 500 will be the last time we see it. I think we're out of that era. And it's sad that it went out like this. I mean, at least the LC is going to be the final version. But like this is just, I don't know, man. I mean, it really left a sour taste in my mouth. I had this car because I was looking forward to driving it, and I thought it would be fun. And it never, ever called to me from the driveway. It never, ever said, hey, let's go for a ride, except for that one snowy day when I did try to do it and it was a disaster. And that just really turned me on it. And I was like, you know what? Just sit there. Like, I don't want to engage with you. I don't want to, all the quirks of driving this car, I don't want to deal with them. You know, the rewards aren't there. And I know I'm sounding extremely negative about this car, and it's rare that I rant like this about a vehicle, but I think it's because two things: the way that some members of the automotive media have, as I mentioned, positioned this as some kind of anachronistic old school throwback that kind of celebrates a previous era. I don't think it does that.
Okay.
And also the fact that it's advertised as an enthusiast car, and I don't think it is.
A part of me believes that sometimes there are a few parts of a car that can really redeem it and save it. And I think that a good motor can paper over a lot of issues. And it's not that it is a good engine, but it's also
it's a great engine.
It's an engine we've seen for a very long time.
It has evolved too, though. I mean, if you look at engines, if you want to talk about engines we've seen for a very long time, Hellcat, also the 6.4 that would be in the Scat Pack. And I think that those are very good. I don't hold their age against them, because I think that Chrysler put effort into redeeming those motors by refreshing them from time to time.
But old engines, by making them for so long, by having the tooling for so long, eventually the pricing on those come down a little bit. You can start to invest in other parts of the car, and we can start getting better transmissions and better chassis.
They just didn't want to make that investment.
So crazy.
I don't think it's crazy. I just think it's like, this is maybe a car that was designed by a marketing department rather than an engineering department. Mm-hmm. And they're like, we've got this stuff. Let's just throw it together and see who'll give us $79,000 for it, And
you're telling people absolutely it's not worth it.
No, not at all.
Okay.
I mean, get an ISF if you want that. They're out there. It's not like this is
cheaper than $70,000.
I assume they are. It's not like this is the only V8 powered IS, It's like, that's what's so strange about it. They did know how to build a good version or a better version of this car. And then this one just isn't it. It just happens to be the most recent.
Ben, anything else you want to talk about with this Lexus?
No, I think I've tread on it enough. I feel bad about it.
There's one more thing I want to talk about. I hope you're not too tired of talking, because it's a story that you recently published on Haggerty.com. And it's about space shuttles, specifically tires of space shuttles, which I found to be really fascinating. And something that you were really excited to talk to me about in the build-up to this story getting published.
It's the Unnamed Orbiter podcast, right? Like that's where we're going now.
And I would love it if you could give me a little rundown about this story. It's the headline is written how a Tamiya tank helped NASA stop space shuttle tires from exploding.
So it turns out that landing a space shuttle is stressful.
Why do you think that is?
The space shuttle weighs 240,000 pounds.
2-4.
And it lands at over 200 miles an hour. And so it only has 6 contact patches to do that. There's like 4 tires under the wings, and there's 2 tires up front. And when it lands, things can get really crazy. Like there's like something like 20 million pound-feet of torque applied to the braking system on a typical landing. And when they were first landing the shuttle, they actually, in the first 17 landings they did from actual missions, they had 14 brake failures, like cracked rotors.
That's wild.
Including one case where they blew a tire on the runway because there was a crosswind and it doubled the amount of torque on the brakes on that particular wheel to 40 million pound-feet, which is totally insane. So
that's hard to fathom. That's wild.
So throughout its life, they were constantly fighting the strength of the tires. They were like, the tires were pressurized with nitrogen between like 300, 315 PSI, depending where they were located on the vehicle. And they weighed about 200 pounds each themselves. They were 44 inches in diameter. It's a pretty big tire. They were constantly fighting with, how do we make these tires safer? Because blowouts are not fun. They can be pretty dangerous. But even more problematic was the fact that, like, if they landed the shuttle and they damaged a tire, it could stay dangerous for like an hour after they had landed it. And they wouldn't necessarily know if they could safely approach the shuttle because of the amount of pressure involved. If a tire on the space shuttle blows up, if it pops, if it blows out, it's the equivalent of like detonating 2.5 sticks of dynamite. Like, it is that much force. It can cause serious injury at 50 feet to a human being, and it will deafen you even if you're 100 feet away.
Jeez.
So NASA came up with this system where they were grading tires after landing. So a tire that was graded green was one that was safe. A tire that was graded yellow was one that could potentially be dangerous for a blowout. And a tire that was graded red was one that was going to blow out. They knew it was going to blow up.
Yeah.
They just didn't know when. The weight was the ratings were based on like visible wear on the tire, temperatures that the tire had been exposed to, and the number of missions that had been run on, I guess. Like the rear tires, they were good for one mission because they were the ones that hit first. Yeah. And that meant they took the brunt of the shock.
The shuttle, everything.
You could get 2 missions out of the front ones. So in the early 90s, they were like, we need to fix the landing gear on the shuttle. We want to make it more safe, more secure. What can we do? So they had 2 ways of testing tires. One was they built this like 57-ton tire rack. It's pretty cool. It would accelerate to like 200 miles an hour or 300 miles an hour in 2.5 seconds.
Whoa.
Yeah, 250 miles an hour in 2 seconds because they used a water jet that would spray at it and the water jet would propel it. And it was 3,000 feet long. And then once it was going at like the proper speed, they would slam it into the ground and they would check out for wear and damage. Right.
Okay.
But they also had a jet. It was a Corvair 990, which was an obsolete-ish kind of passenger jet that they attached a version of the landing gear of the shuttle to. And then they programmed these landing profiles into the jet and they would slam it into the runway. It's pretty much the best way to describe it. And the jet was better than the test track because there were 3 places in the world where they would normally land the shuttle. There's like 2 normal ones and then a backup, depending on where the shuttle is in its orbit. Like the backup is pretty much for emergencies or if there's a weather issue kind of deal. So the jet could go to these different runways in a way that the internal tire testing couldn't. And that would expose it to what the runway surface was actually made of. Okay. And they would do, in the early 90s, they started really hitting this jet hard to do as much testing as they could. And it would get pretty dramatic. Like they could grind tires down to the point where the wheel was like 4 inches away from the axle. Like that's how much material had been ground down. They would have tires catch fire. They did a lot of work on it. But the problem was, just like with the shuttle, if you had like a yellow tire, like one that was in the yellow danger spectrum, you could not approach the land.
Yeah, as you said, like the what do you want to call it? The range in which a person can be around it is huge.
Yeah, it's too dangerous. It's basically a time bomb, and it's a time bomb with a fuse no one can see. You have no idea when it's going to go off. So NASA decided, okay, we need a way to like diffuse the situation. They tried using bomb testing robots. Not bomb testing, sorry. Bomb disposal robots.
Oh, yeah.
But like those dudes, there's a couple problems with them. The first is they're not designed to do like any kind of work that requires precision. They're designed to grab a bomb and drag it somewhere where it can be blown up and disposed of safely, right?
Okay.
So what NASA wanted to do was take a drill and pierce the tire and hopefully let the pressure out in a way that it wouldn't explode. But they needed to be prepared if it did. So whatever was doing this job had to be armored against that, right? So that's why they went with bomb disposal robots. The other problem with the bomb disposal robots is they cost between $75,000 and $125,000 back in 1993. So like that's a lot of money. And,
for something that could potentially get blown up.
Yeah, exactly. So what finally ended up happening is a contractor for NASA, this guy named David Carrot, 2 T's, he was like, why don't we just use a model tank? And they were like, what? And he's like, yeah. He went and bought a Tamiya 1/16 scale Tiger II tank.
1/16 scale. Yeah, a little Japanese remote control.
And he tore the top off of it, armored the bottom a little bit, and then attached a DeWalt drill and he replaced the motors that were inside it with DeWalt motors, I believe.
Yeah.
And then he used Black & Decker batteries, and it was a 3/8 drill bit, and it had a temperature, it had a wireless video camera, pretty fancy for the 90s, and a temperature probe. And he could drive this thing up to the tire and like use the temperature probe to find a safe spot and then start drilling. And it was like an ingenious solution. It only cost like $3,000.
In comparison to the other costs, of course.
It's so cool. And the other funny thing I think about this is like, in the 60s, or sorry, I guess the 50s, after the Second World War, the American government brought a bunch of Nazi scientists over to the United States who had been involved in the V1 program, which was the buzz bombs and rocket bombs that had been launched from Germany to London. And they used those to develop the space program that eventually put people on the moon. It was called Operation Paperclip.
Okay.
So I like to think of this Tamiya tank. It was a Tiger II, which is a German tank, a Wehrmacht tank from the Second World War. It's like the last time Operation Paperclip employed like some Nazis to like take care of something in the space program. I thought this is pretty funny. Anyway, this little tank that was really successful. It did 32 missions. 32 times they were too scared of the tire to go near it. And the tire blew up 9 times out of 32 and it survived. You can go to the Armstrong Flight Research Center in California, Edwards Air Force Base, and see it. It's behind glass. You can take a look at the little tiger dude. It's
great. I love it. Tires, man.
They named it the Tire Assault Vehicle.
Oh, man.
The TAV. I just think that's cool. It's fun. It's like, it's a very cheap way to deal with a very real problem that was super dangerous. Normally, when the government deals with these kinds of problems, they spend billions of dollars to like come up with something that seems like it could have obviously been done a different way. And this is the one time that didn't happen. So anyway, I put together a story on Haggerty about that because I thought it was fascinating. I like writing. There's a lot of stuff about the space program, specifically the NASA space program, that ended up in there was an automotive component to it. For example, the reason we have tire pressure sensors in our cars, that technology comes directly from the space shuttle. That was developed for the space shuttle and used for the space shuttle. So there's lots of stuff like that that's really neat. There's also some like heat reflective technologies that are also used in cars and engine bays and whatnot today that were originally developed for like re-entry on the shuttle. They needed a way to reflect heat that wasn't very heavy, because typically mass is what you use to insulate heat, but putting anything into orbit costs $1 billion per ton, right? Like it's insane. So the lighter it is, the better it is. And if you look at the automotive industry, it's the same deal. It's like the lighter a vehicle is, I mean, you wouldn't think that looking at how heavy cars are today, but there was once a time where we prized lightness and fuel economy. So they wanted this kind of shielding technology was also very helpful for car manufacturing.
I love it. One of my favorite things I've ever read a headline of and then got me to read the story of. So, Ben, I really recommend people head on over to Haggerty.com and check out your full story for all the full details, all the photos of this space shuttle story.
Yeah, there's some fun shredded tire pictures and a fun picture of the little tank dude doing its tank job.
I love it. Anything else you want to talk about today?
No, I think that's it.
Really? That's it?
That's it. Can you handle it? Can you handle the podcast being over tonight?
I'm gonna have to handle it. Yes. If you want to hear more of our podcast, I really recommend you head on over to our website, unnamedautomotivepodcast.com. There are a ton of links to our previous episodes, but more important than that, there is a contact form that you can fill out, and your feedback will land right in our inbox, which is really handy. But if you don't want to go through the rigmarole of doing that, just send us an email the old-fashioned way. It's benjamin@benjaminhunting.com. Or you can reach out to us on social media. We prefer Instagram of all of the ones out there. I'm at Sammy_ha, like you're laughing, while Ben is at Hunting Benjamin.
Sammy, what are we going to be talking about next week on the podcast?
Next week, I will be driving Next week is my birthday. Wow.
Whoa, what? Whoa, hold the phone.
And I will be driving the most birthday car of all, a Hyundai Sonata Hybrid.
Wow, I bet you had to get in line for that one.
Yeah, I really did.
I'm going to be talking about another vehicle that surprised me, but in the opposite direction, and that is the Chevrolet Equinox, the gas-powered Chevrolet Equinox.
Oh yeah, I can't wait to hear it. I can't wait to hear this. I love it.
All right, thanks for listening, everybody.
See you later. Bye.